Good morning, Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Bible. That's what happens when I start recording, and it's the first thing I've said today. Hope you're doing well. We are in Luke, once again, chapter 22. This is where the story starts to really pick up speed. So you remember yesterday, Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, in a place called the Mount of Olives, where he'd been staying for the last few nights. But this garden, he goes there specifically to pray. And while he's there, he tells all of his disciples to pray as well, so they don't all get tempted. Jesus goes away, he prays, Father, please take the cup from me. I don't want to be dealing with this. This is too much. This is really scary. And God sends an angel to give him strength. But Jesus does say at the end of that prayer, he says, but not my will be done, but yours. And so God sends this angel. This angel gives Jesus strength. He prays so hard, he's sweating drops of blood. He goes back to his disciples, and of course they've all fallen asleep. They didn't keep praying all the way through the night like he did. And so now we see what continues from that. So Jesus has just told his disciples, why are you asleep? Get up, keep praying. But while Jesus was speaking, there came a crowd, and a man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He drew near to Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? And when those who were around saw what would follow, they said, Lord, shall we strike with the sword? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. But Jesus said, no more of this. And he touched his ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests and officers of the temple and elders who had come out against him, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs? When I was with you day after day in the temple, you did not lay hands on me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness. So, it's all kicked off. I've been saying it's going to kick off soon for quite a few videos now, and this is the point where it kicks off. So, while Jesus was speaking to them, there came a crowd, and the man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. So, you remember the other day, Judas made a deal. It was right at the start of this chapter. In the beginning of chapter 22 from verse 3, it says, then Satan entered into Judas, who was one of the 12. He went away and conferred with the chief priests on how he might betray Jesus to them. So Judas had Satan enter into his heart. It says in John that he had never believed in the first place. He'd never had that faith. He was sort of just pretending. And so the promise of money, the promise of silver is enough to sort of tempt Judas away. Tempt Judas away. And so Judas goes, he confers with the chief priests. The temple that Jesus had been speaking in, that was their domain. That was what kind of belonged to the chief priests and all the people who come. We get a list of them even in this passage. The crowd consists of chief priests, officers of the temple, and elders. So these are all guys from the temple. These are all guys who, would have seen Jesus preaching there day after day and would have been annoyed. They were the people who sent spies to try and catch him out and all the rest of it. And have been sort of criticising him and who Jesus has been heavily criticising. These are the guys who are making up the crowd, and they're led by Judas, one of Jesus' own followers, who's decided to betray him. And so Judas said to them before, when he was planning with them, he said, the man who I kiss is the one who is Jesus. He is the one who is guilty, who you need to capture. And so Judas draws near to Jesus to give him a kiss. But before Judas can kiss him, Jesus says something to him. He says, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? And so we're left to assume after that point that Judas does. This passage, interestingly, doesn't actually give us some of the details. For example, it doesn't tell us who's in the crowd until later. It doesn't tell us necessarily that they arrest Jesus explicitly. It leaves all those things implied. The focus is on Judas's arrival and Jesus asking him that question. And the fact that we don't get Judas's answer, but instead we see the action of Jesus being arrested, very much shows us that yes, Judas would betray him with a kiss. It's a very sort of bittersweet way to do it, but yeah, Oh, and another interesting thing as well from my notes. It says usually crowd is positive towards Jesus, but this is not an ordinary crowd. So Judas led the crowd to Jesus and gave him a kiss. Whereas it was customary for a disciple to greet his teacher with a kiss, here it serves as a means of betrayal to identify Jesus in the darkness. So we get both the crowd, the image of the crowd, which has sort of always been a positive thing. There's been a crowd with Jesus. Now this crowd is against Jesus, so that's turned. And equally, Judas greeting Jesus with a kiss. One of his followers giving his teacher a kiss, that would have been a good thing, but here it's been turned to be an evil thing. And that's sort of indicative of how we see Satan act quite a lot of the time. He'll take things that are normally good things and he'll kind of twist them against their purpose. So yeah, let's keep going. And when those who were with him saw what would follow, they said, "Lord, shall we strike with the sword?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. So this is something that's mentioned in all four of the accounts, but Jesus healing the person's ear is only mentioned in Luke. So it's only in this passage where it says, "But Jesus said no more of this, and he touched his ear and healed him." So Jesus' followers, they've been prepping for this. Jesus had said to them just before, he was like, make sure you bring swords with you. So they had swords with them. They'd sold their cloaks and they had 2 swords among them. And so when they see all these people arrive, they assume like, oh, this is the time we're supposed to be using our swords. And so they run up to one of the servants of the high priest and they cut off the servant's ear. And Jesus is like, no, stop, false alarm, do not cut his ear off. That's not what we're supposed to be doing here. I'm going to go peacefully, we're not doing that. And to make amends, Jesus goes and heals this man's ear. He just touches the ear and it's healed, which again is like, that's one of Jesus's most sort of, crazy healing miracles. Like, I know he's done a lot of like big stuff. He's healed blindness and all the rest of it, but the sort of physical healing of an ear, it doesn't tell us whether the ear sort of reattaches or whether the ear sort of like grows anew. We don't know, but the fact that Jesus just touched his head and this ear heals, that's really big. That's a very, very big miracle. But Jesus isn't doing it to sort of someone who's come to him in faith, or someone who's this, someone who's that. Jesus does it to someone who was wronged by one of his disciples. And so that shows Jesus, Jesus' love and Jesus' compassion and grace extends out just beyond his own followers. It extends out to people who don't know him yet. Even people who are actively his enemy. God still demonstrates sort of grace and love towards these people, even when they're trying to kill him. So then Jesus said to the chief priests and the officers of the temple and the elders who had come out against him. So Jesus addresses the crowd. He addresses all of these people. He says, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs? When I was with you day after day in the temple, you did not lay hands on me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness." So Jesus criticizes these people. He doesn't tell them not to arrest him. He doesn't try and come up with an excuse. He doesn't run away. He doesn't do any of these things. He stands there and he criticizes them for coming at him like he's a criminal, like he's a robber. They've brought swords and clubs, and it sort of shows the lack of understanding that these people have for Jesus, because they assume he's going to fight back. They assume he's going to be vicious towards them because that's their own nature. They assume that they're going to be met with violence, but in reality they're met with peace. And so Jesus criticizes them for that. He criticizes them for assuming, for not understanding who he is, not understanding that he's a peaceful man. Sorry, the camera cut off there. So yeah, Jesus criticizes them for assuming that he's violent and not understanding his true nature. But then he goes a step further. He says, "When I was with you day after day in the temple, you did not lay hands on me." So he's saying, you had all these opportunities to arrest me. I've been teaching in your temple, I've been speaking in your temple for days now, under broad daylight, in front of crowds, in front of everybody. But you didn't have the bravery, you didn't have the courage to come and arrest me then, because you knew what you were doing is wrong. You knew that, the crowds who were with me wouldn't have stood for it. You knew that, your actions in the light of day wouldn't come across favourably at all. So you have to do them by night. You have to sneak them through and kind of do them covertly. He says, "But this is your hour and the power of darkness." So Jesus has talked a few times about the hour. The hour is here. The hour has come. And so obviously he doesn't mean like a literal hour, because it's been much more than an hour since he started talking about this hour that has come. The hour that he's referring to is this hour. This is the hour when sort of these people are in charge. These people kind of win almost. They put Jesus to death. They capture him. They arrest him. This is their hour. This is the time when they're in power. But little do they know that actually they're setting up for Jesus to be in power forever. He says, and the power of darkness. This is your hour and the power of darkness. So he calls out the power of darkness specifically, both as being the power of nighttime, that they think they can get away with doing this under the shade of night, that they wouldn't do it during the day, but also the power of darkness being, evil, being Satan's power. This is your hour and the power of darkness. So Jesus has now been arrested. He's been taken by this crowd who are all wielding swords and clubs. Temple officials who are wielding swords and clubs, which kind of shows where their hearts are, who have come to arrest him, and Jesus goes peacefully with them, even to the point of healing one of their servants. But that is where we're going to end it today. We've got a bit more to get through tomorrow. I hope you all have a wonderful week, a wonderful day, all the rest of it, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye bye bye.